Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly profound piece of writing. You know, we constantly hear that sheer hard work, grit, and talent are the ultimate keys to our life's trajectory. But the text we're analyzing today, it completely flips that on its head. It tells the story of an ordinary village man named Huda Baksh. His extraordinary habit? He valued people way more than wealth. So we're going to explore a really fascinating question. Is it actually our raw effort, or is it the company we keep that truly dictates where we end up in life?
Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote right here is the absolute bedrock of Huda Baksh's completely unconventional philosophy. It basically translates to, it is easy to be poor in pocket, but poverty of character is the greatest poverty. While everyone around him was obsessing over capital and social climbing, he looked at wealth through a totally different lens. He genuinely believed that the direction of a person's life isn't just decided by their hard work. It's heavily dictated by who they spend their time with. To him, an empty wallet was just a temporary inconvenience, but an empty character, that was true devastation.
Let's ask ourselves a really tough question for a second. Are you steering your life, or are the people around you steering it? Huda Baksh often pointed out that the wrong path usually starts with the wrong people, and the right destination is often found simply by walking with the right people. It kind of forces us to take a hard look at our own inner circles, doesn't it? Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world.
Section 1. Two Paths, Two Destinies. To really understand this, we need to look at a macro-level case study from the text. Back when Huda Baksh was younger, he and his peers stood at a crossroads. They all wanted to go to the city to do business, but they ended up splitting into two very distinct camps. One camp was made up of highly intelligent peers, but honestly, their ethics were pretty questionable. Their mantra was basically, money is everything, the method doesn't matter, success just must be achieved. They were chasing extremely fast success, completely unburdened by honesty. It's a lot like the darker side of modern hustle culture, right? Huda Baksh, on the other hand, chose to stick with a few old companions. They had very little capital, but their character was absolutely stellar. They explicitly avoided lies and deceit. And you know what? When Huda Baksh chose this slower, honest path, people literally laughed at him. They told him he'd stay poor forever.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happened just a few years later. The contrast is absolutely staggering. That group that chased fast money, well, they got exactly what they wanted. Big cars, flashy offices, fame. But look at the staggering cost. Their trust was entirely broken. They lived in constant suspicion of one another, drowning in court cases, broken partnerships, just shattered relationships. Now compare that to Huda Baksh's honest group. Sure, they had less money, but they actually slept peacefully at night. Their homes were filled with honor. Their kids learned truthfulness. And they had incredibly loyal friends who stood by them through thick and thin. The sheer misery of dishonest wealth versus the peace of honest living is perfectly captured here.
Section 2. The Ruined Youth. Now, the text shifts from this macro-level view of Huda Baksh's peers down to a deeply personal, micro-level proof of this philosophy. It happens one day when Huda Baksh is just sitting at a railway station. He spots a young man sitting there holding his head, weeping uncontrollably. When Huda Baksh asks him what's wrong, the young man pours out this incredibly tragic story. And just look at this downward spiral. I mean, this wasn't someone who lacked opportunity. He had a great education, he had a fantastic job. But he made one absolutely fatal error. He chose the wrong friends. Those so-called friends pushed him into addiction, which trapped him in massive, crushing debt. And once his life was ruined, every single one of those friends abandoned him completely. His good education and his solid job, they were absolutely useless against the toxic gravity of bad company.
Huda Baksh just listens quietly to this heartbreaking story. Then, he places a hand on the young man's shoulder and delivers this powerful realization. Life's most expensive mistake is choosing the wrong people. The youth is stunned, and he asks him, well then, what is the greatest success? Huda Baksh simply smiles and replies, choosing the right people.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an incredibly actionable framework. The young man took this advice to heart and completely re-engineered his environment. Step 1, he completely cut ties with his toxic circle. He just walked away. Step 2, he actively sought out a mentor, a teacher, to guide him. Step 3, he surrounded himself with integrity by working with an honest merchant. And finally, Step 4, he focused on rebuilding his moral compass by learning ethics from an elder at the local mosque. He systematically replaced negative toxic influences with incredibly positive ones.
So fast forward 5 years and this same ruined youth is now a highly successful, stable human being.
He visits Kutabakhsh, his eyes just full of gratitude, and says, "You changed my life." But I absolutely love Kutabakhsh's brilliant observation here. He laughs and tells the young man, "I changed nothing. You just changed the people around you. The rest of your life changed itself." It's such a profound mechanical truth about personal transformation, isn't it? If you fix the environment fixes the person.
Section 3. Wealth without inner peace.
At this point, the narrative pivots. We just saw how bad company leads to material and personal poverty. But what happens when you have all the money in the world, but you still lack something absolutely crucial? Right after the youth leaves, a very wealthy merchant approaches Kutabakhsh. The merchant confesses that he has boundless wealth, but absolutely zero inner peace. Kutabakhsh doesn't ask him about his business strategies. He doesn't ask about his investment portfolio. Instead, he asks him this one, incredibly piercing question: who are the people around you? Take a second to let that really sink in.
That question literally stops the merchant dead in his tracks. He goes completely silent. And in that quiet moment, a totally devastating realization washes over him. The people in his inner circle, his constant everyday companions, they didn't care about him at all. They only loved his money. He was surrounded by people, yet completely, utterly alone. His spiritual emptiness was a direct result of these purely transactional relationships.
Section 4. The mango seed metaphor.
To logically explain exactly why our environment has this much absolute power over our potential, Kutabakhsh uses a brilliant grounding visual metaphor. He picks up a mango seed from the ground and places it in his hand. Now, what's really interesting about this metaphor is how perfectly this simple agricultural truth maps onto human psychology. Kutabakhsh explains that if you plant this mango seed in fertile soil, it's going to inevitably grow into a strong, towering, fruitful tree. The seed fulfills its absolute maximum potential. But if you take that exact same seed, with all the same inherent DNA and potential, and throw it onto barren rocks, it'll simply dry up and die.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that human beings are exactly like that seed. As Kutabakhsh states, the right environment, right friends, right teacher, and right family give fruit to a person's potential. They are the fertile soil. Conversely, toxic company is the rocky ground. Bad companions will wither and destroy even the best, most talented individual. You simply cannot outwork a toxic environment, just like a seed cannot grow on a rock no matter how hard it tries.
Section 5. True meaning of life.
This brings us to the final chapter of the text, which focuses on the ultimate legacy of Kutabakhsh. Years later, this ordinary man from a village passes away, and it's at his funeral that the absolute truth of his philosophy is put on full display for everyone to see. Just look at the insane diversity of the crowd that showed up to mourn him. It wasn't just a gathering of wealthy elites or old business partners. It was the rich, the poor, teachers, day laborers, merchants, students, and yes, even that once ruined youth whose life he had saved at the train station. This incredible cross-section of humanity proved that Kutabakhsh possessed a true lasting wealth. He built a genuine community bound by mutual respect and high character.
As the massive crowd stood there, someone whispered this incredibly moving sentiment. Kutabakhsh did not build palaces, but he built people. And an elder nearby simply replied that this is the only capital that even death cannot snatch away from a person. By investing his time and energy directly into the character of the people around him, rather than just amassing physical brick and mortar, Kutabakhsh created a truly immortal legacy.
You know, whenever Kutabakhsh saw a child, he would always give them this piece of timeless advice. He'd say, "Son, don't always just think about where you are going. First see who you are going with." Because as he knew, the paths often change according to the temperament of the companions. We spend so much time obsessing over our goals, our specific destinations, our 5-year plans, but Kutabakhsh teaches us that the map is entirely irrelevant if you're traveling with people who are going to steer you right off a cliff.
Which brings us to our final point, and a deeply provocative question that the text leaves lingering in the air for all of us. Before success, whose company are you choosing? On that day at the funeral, many people made a vow to prioritize their companions over their raw ambitions. Because true life, as that young man wrote in his diary all those years ago, means being with the right people, every time, everywhere. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to take a hard look at the circle around you today.